So picking up from where we were last time, Miguel, would you care to start us off, please?
Yes. After beholding the white head of Sai Baba, Meher, with Behramji, turned his footsteps to the residence of Sadguru Upasni Maharaj, who, as will be seen later, was destined to bring him to full consciousness after 6 long years. It was then the last month of the year 1915, all those in quotes, and a new pair of quotes. Kashinath Govindrao Upasni, now well known as Sadguru Upasni Maharaj, was born on May 15, 1870, at Satana in the district of Nasik. His childhood was happy, but occasionally he was found sunk in a state of depression. When he became 7 years old, it was decided by his guardians to send him to school. But the boy hated the idea of a school. It was to him like going to a prison, and to study was equivalent to being heavily punished. He disliked studies, not because he wished to play, but because he was religious minded. Nothing gave him so much joy as the offering of prayer, participation in the performance of ceremonies, and the hearing of sermons. From his early childhood, the very word religion cast a spell upon him. Indications of his future were seen in his boyhood. In courtesy and modesty, in generosity and devoutness, the boy was said to be father to the man. When scarcely 12 years of age, he resolved to relinquish the shelter of his parents' home and to lead the itinerant life of a monk. From Thulia, he went on foot to Nasik, where he chanced upon an old friend of his grandfather. The aged man, on hearing the boy's story, requested him to stay with him. The boy accepted the offer, but hated to be a burden to his host. Though he lodged in the old man's house, he did not accept food from him. When hungry, he will go out and beg. His father, as soon as he came to know that his son was in Nasik, thought of a plan to call him back. He sent a telegram to say that the boy's mother was on her deathbed and was pining to see him. The telegram made the boy sorrow stricken, and he returned to Dhulia. But there he found his mother in health and strength. He entered into his parents' feelings and agreed to their request to stay with them. But he remained heavily hearted. End of quote. A new quote. After some time, his parents married him to a girl named Durgabai. Within a couple of years of her marriage, Durgabai died. When he was 16, he married for a second time, but the marriage failed to produce any effect upon his temperament. It did not remove his melancholy. He was conscious of the fact that his parents had forced him into a course of life which was entirely opposed to his convictions. His parents grieved for him, but they had not the heart to agree to his daily request to allow him to lead the life of total renunciation. However, when the conviction that he will grieve himself to death grew upon them, they saw the advisability of complying with his wishes. After obtaining their blessings, Kashinath bade goodbye to them and went to Pune, where he resumed the life of a sannyasi. He practiced great austerities. When he was about 20 years old, he shut himself up for 1 year in a cave on the top of a mountain near Nasik. When he came out of it, he was reduced to a skeleton. After leaving the cave, he stayed 3 months in a village inhabited by poor people who fed him and to whom he tried to be useful. Then he returned on foot to Dhulia. Within 3 years of his reunion with his family, he lost first his father, then his grandfather, and lastly his wife. 6 months after the death of his second wife, his mother and uncle got him married for the 3rd time. Then he went with his wife to Pune, where he lived at the house of his brother, Balkrishna, who was then one of the professors at the Pune Training College. From Pune, he repaired by himself to Sangli, which is situated north, not far from Kolhapur. In Sangli, there is a temple known as Sri Dattagura Temple, which borders on the river Krishna. In this temple, Kashinath stayed, leading the life of a devout monk for 2.5 years. His food during this period was mainly the leaves of certain trees. He only occasionally partook of grains and fruits. Soon after this period, he set out for Pune, but on the way he was captured by a band of gypsies on a pretext which resembled that under which the wolf in the fable ate up the lamb. The gypsies flatly refused to release him unless he first provided them with a large sum of money. As he had not a price on his person, as he had not a piece on his person, they forced him to work for them. But in 2 days, he got back his freedom. He then went to Pune, whence with his wife he went to Satana, where he began to practice as an Atha Veda doctor. He soon shone out as a practitioner and became well known. As he was fired with the zeal to establish a hospital in a well-populated city, he went to Amravati, which is in the central provinces, not far from Nagpur. Immediately after settling in it, he founded a nursing home, which he designated Rama Ashram. Kashinath was an ideal doctor. He gave free treatment to the poor and was far more bent on restoring health than upon making money. No wonder that within a short time, he became popular with the people of Amravati. But Kashinath was not born for such a life, and it began to bore him, though it was bringing him both fame and riches. Boredom at last caused him so much disgust that he gave up medicine and repaired to Ujjain. He was then about 35 years old. With his wife, he led a quiet and holy life in Ujjain for a couple of years, passing the greater part of the day in prayer and meditation. From Ujjain, the husband and wife went to Amravati, whence, after staying for a few days, they repaired to Nagpur, where Narayan Maharaj was then staying on a flying visit. Sometime after this, he went to Rahuri, which is in the district of Ahmednagar, and stayed there for a few days as a guest of Kulkarni Maharaj, who was a yogi. The latter urged him to pay a visit to Asrat Sai Baba, but Kashinath declined to do so for the reason that Sai Baba was a Mohammedan. Why should I go to a Mohammedan, said he to his host, and pay him devotion? Even if I am likely to be benefited at his hands, I must not call upon him. After taking leave of his host, he went to the jungle, not far from Rahuri. Not minding the thorns, he made the jungle his abode. He was at this time in the depths of depression and imbued with the belief that he was soon to die. After several days, he left the jungle and went to the village of Jehuri. From Jehuri, he repaired to Morgaon, and from Morgaon to Supa, where he resided in a temple for some days. The people of Supa were much drawn to him and paid him devotion as a saint, though he told them repeatedly that he was but an ordinary itinerant monk. Some of his devotees one day took him to the Shankar temple, which had a small underground cell. Seeing it, he asked them whether they would like to go down into it. But all of them refused to do so, as it was in darkness. Though they requested him not to descend into it, Kashinath went down, and to the surprise of all who were watching him, no sooner did he enter it that it was illuminated by a bright light. Where the light came from, neither he nor anybody else could understand. That is how the story goes.
Thanks, Miguel. Marianne, please unmute and continue, please.
From Supa, Kashinath went to Kedgaon to call upon Narayan Maharaj. But he had gone to Bombay, so Kashinath also went to Bombay. There he expressed his desire to talk with Narayan Maharaj privately. The latter replied, quote, "You should go presently from here, but come back in the evening," end quote. When he called upon the Sadguru in the evening, Narayan, as soon as his eyes fell upon him, said, "Do not be afraid. Everything will be all right in a few days." After uttering these words, Narayan gave Kashinath something to eat, told him to masticate it thoroughly, and then observed, quote, "Today you have been so much painted as till now nobody was ever painted." It was beyond the comprehension of Kashinath to grasp the significance of these words, and he was so much bewildered that the Sadguru said to him, "Never mind if you do not understand me. The time will come, and it is approaching fast, when you will understand everything." He added, "For the present, be contented with believing that you have been thoroughly painted. I cannot explain what I mean." On the following day, Kashinath went to the Sadguru and asked his permission to leave Bombay. The Sadguru replied, "You may go out of Bombay whenever you like. I will meet you within a few days, and in such a way that I will permanently stay with you." These words were mysterious, and Kashinath wondered what the Sadguru meant. After leaving Bombay, Kashinath went to Ratha in the Ahmednagar district. From Ratha, he went to Shirdi to see the Hazrat Sai Baba. His prejudice against him having melted away. After a short time, he asked Sai Baba's permission to go. "What?" said the Sadguru. "Do you want to go away so soon?" No, you shall not go so soon. Go and stay for a few days in that yard." This silenced Kashinath, but he made a wry face, and he did not like to stay there. Sai Baba read his face and said, all right, you may go, but return to me within 9 days." "If it is possible for me," said Kashinath, "to return here within 9 days, I certainly will, but I do not give you any promise." Kashinath then went to the Chitali railway station, which is only 13 miles from Shirdi. It so came to pass that by a combination of circumstances, in spite of himself, he was forced to return to the Sadguru on the 8th day. When he presented himself, Sai Baba asked him, "How many days have elapsed since you left the village?" "Today is the 8th day, sir," was the reply. "Now then," observed Sai Baba, "did I not tell you that you would return within 9 days? Now go and make the yard your abode." Kashinath carried out this command. In a few days, Sai Baba, we are told, made Kashinath, who was then about 42 years, God realized, and then brought him down from the divine plane to restore a little normal consciousness. Thus, Kashinath Govindrao Upasni became perfect and was called Upasni Maharaj. Afterwards, Sai Baba told him to dwell in the Khandoba temple, which was not far from the abode of the Sadguru. In this temple, Upasni Maharaj lived for 4 years. As he was possessed only of a little earthly consciousness, he sometimes acted like a madman. But all who understood his condition respected him as much as they respected his master, Sai Baba. After 4 years at the Khandoba temple, Sai Baba brought him to the consciousness of the earthly world. Thus, when he was 47 years old, Upasni Maharaj became a Sadguru, or perfect master. Soon after becoming a Sadguru, Upasni Maharaj left Shirdi and went to Nagpur, where he stayed for a few weeks. From Nagpur, he went to Kharagpur, a village in the Mangair district of Bengal. At Kharagpur, he stayed for about a year. Scarcely a week elapsed after his arrival when his saintliness revealed itself and drew towards him persons of all castes and creeds. His Hindu devotees, even then, numbered thousands, Mohammedans by hundreds, and Christians by scores. His luminous face enthralled, as it still enthralls, thousands of men, women, and children. Sometimes he stayed with Brahmins, but often with Bhangis. Bhangis are sweepers who clean the streets and remove the refuse of the houses. They are considered to be untouchables by the Brahmins. But even when Upasni Maharaj was in the locality inhabited by Bhangis, Brahmins called upon him and performed ceremonies before him without any reserve or scruple. Sometimes, to test the faith of his Brahmin visitors, he would say, "You belong to the highest caste. Are you not ashamed to approach me when I'm staying with these untouchables?" And his visitors would reply, "Why should we be ashamed to come near you? Are you not Paramatman? To whatever place you go, it becomes holy. Wherever you go, we shall follow." Clad in beggar's rags, he was often found helping workmen in public streets. Sometimes he was with cobblers mending shoes, or with poor women grinding corn, or cleaning vessels, or breaking stones. He swept the streets of the slums and the hovels of the poor. From Kharagpur, he went to Nagpur, and from Nagpur to the district of Ahmednagar. For the last 19 years, he has stayed in Sakori, which is a village about 9 miles from the Chitali railway station. His home is small, though the temple he has built near it is large and splendid. The temple is open not only to the Hindus of low as well as high caste, but also to non-Hindus. He generally wears nothing save a loincloth, and his food is as simple as his clothing. The accusation has been made against Upasni Maharaj that he sometimes not only vituperates, but also severely beats some of his followers. The accusation is not groundless. The charge can also be leveled against other sadgurus. That a God-realized person should abuse and beat others may seem odd, but the explanation is that when he beats or abuses anyone, he is doing such a one much good. And there's a footnote. When a master acts in such a fashion, he is wiping out some of the devotees' sanskaras. Okay. When Upasani Maharaj saw Meher for the first time, he flung a stone at him. This was to help to bring Meher down still further into gross consciousness, to awaken him to the things of this world. The stone hit Meher's head, but he was not surprised and understood the reason of what was done. Meher stayed with Upasani for 2 days and then returned to Pune. From that day onwards, Meher recommenced to visit Babajan, sitting with her every night for about an hour. He also, at that time, took food twice daily.
Thanks, Marianne. Gloria, please, could you unmute and continue?
Return to normality. Quote, all this time, the members of the Meher's family considered that he was weak in the head and did not regard him as being in a high spiritual state. Almost every day, he would go to the Parsi Tower of Silence and sit there for hours, or go to the jungle beyond, where he would sit knocking his forehead against the stones. His head was bruised, but Meher wrapped a handkerchief about his head to hide the bruises so that his family were not aware of what was happening. Meher has since explained that the physical pain caused by knocking his head relieved the spiritual agony in which he was at that time. He no longer felt an impulse to travel, but twice each month he would go to Sakori to visit Upasani Maharaj. He also wrote regularly to the Sadguru and later wrote to Meher. None of these letters has been preserved, but they are said to be unintelligible to other readers. End of the quote. Quote, as Meher gradually became normal, his mother more and more pressed upon him the desirability of adopting a profession or engaging in some business. He was then 22 years of age. Meher tried to do as his mother wished, and on 3 occasions found employment, but he could remain nowhere for long. He was compelled to play the role of a spiritual eccentric. Quote ends. Quote, in 1916, Meher was appointed manager of the Khan Kabazji Katau theatrical company, and in that capacity went to Lahore. At that time, he wrote a letter to his friend Bekhramji, in which he said, quote, I am compelled to do even what I do not like, compelled to eat what I dislike, forced to put on clothes for which I have no liking, end of quote. While still holding this appointment, he used to visit solitary places and continued to beat his head against stone walls. But after 2 months, the proprietor of the company died and it was disbanded, and Meher returned to Pune. He then took charge of his father's tea shop at Askurshana in the Pune cantonment. For the old man was sick and had to go to Bombay. Meher was not a successful shopkeeper. He could not keep his mind on the business and was cheated by the customers. On his father's return from Bombay, he, the father, applied for a license to deal in toddy and opened a shop in the locality of Kasbah Peth in the city. Meher looked after this shop for 2 hours every day, but the customers took pleasure in cheating him. In spite of this, however, Meher made up his mind to open a toddy shop on his own in partnership with his friend Mesrami, who secured the license for Meher's father's shop in Kasbah Peth. And Meher and Mesrami became partners. Meher worked in a shop from 6 in the morning until 12 o'clock, washing the bottles, sweeping the floor, and serving customers. The toddy is the sap of the palm tree, a cheap drink and not of a strong alcoholic content. Meher, however, used to urge his customers, who were largely the poor riff-raff of the city, to drink moderately and often urged them to abstain altogether. After a year of this work, Meher became merely a sleeping partner, and in the troublous times at the non-cooperation movement, the toddy shops were picketed as well as liquor shops, and Meher prevailed upon Mesrami to dissolve their partnership and to close the shop. End quote. Quote, during this time, Meher used to play the game of Atya-Patya, the game of the rishis, Gilla Danda, Indian cricket played with a thick stick for the bat and a thin stick instead of a ball, and cricket, and used to entertain his friends in the evening. He hired a small room near the shop and hung the walls with pictures of saints and prophets, including Babajan and Upsani Maharaj. Ceremonies were performed every evening and twice a week between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. End quote. Quote, one day in 1920, Meher showed himself up in an attic belonging to Behranchri in the locality of Kamatipura. He remained in the attic for 36 hours. When he came out, he was in a pitiable condition. From head to foot, he was smeared with dirt. He had obtained a bucket of refuse which he got from a sweeper of the public roads, and he was thoroughly exhausted. Mesrami, this is a quote, a footnote, sorry. In abnormal psychology, it's not that the attraction to dirt can be associated with an intense sense of nearness to God. IHC. Yeah. Mesrami took it upon himself to make him clean. The stage in spiritual development in which Meher then was impelled him to do the most lowly work, hence the toddy shop, and to object himself continually. Here we are reminded of the life of St. Francis. Meher had visions and spiritual experiences. On one occasion, he realized that the universe was created for him, and he was alone in it. At another time, sitting near a pond of Takori, he felt that the thoughts of others were entering his mind. He was so much disturbed that he sought relief by immersing his head in the pond. End of the quote. He becomes a master. Quote, by the beginning of 1921, Meher was 3/4 normal. He could do ordinary acts, speak in a normal way, and understand what was said to him. In the month of July, he went to Sakori and lived there for 6 months with Upasni Maharaj. During that period, he did not take a bath, nor did he lie down to rest, but walked continuously or sat upright. He took food at first only once in 2 or 3 days. During the last month, however, for some reason, he ate a great deal, taking 4 meals a day. He was looked after by the spiritual mother of Upasni Maharaj, who was then about 50 years old. She regarded it as her mission to serve Meher and put herself at his beck and call. Meher and Upasni Maharaj used to spend a number of hours together at night and every day, when none was allowed to approach them. Usually they sat silent. Sometimes Meher would sing. End of the quote. I have been told by those who had heard him that his voice was so beautiful that it made people weep. IHC. Quote, at the end of December 1921, Meher was restored to full normal consciousness. Upasni Maharaj said to his disciples, I have been given my charge to Merwan. He is the holder of my key. Sometime later, in the presence of a number of people, the Sadguru said, this boy will move the world. Humanity at large will be benefited at his hands. A few days later, Upasni Maharaj sent for Ustadji Hansotia, one of his leading disciples, and said, I have made Merwan perfect. He is the latest Sadguru of his age, of this age. Now you have to leave me and stick to him. To Bekshramji, he said, your friend is God realized. Carry out every command and every desire of his. So Meher became a Sadguru at the age of 27 and came to be recognized as Meher Baba. End of quote.
Thank you, Gloria. Rolf, could you unmute and continue?
I don't know if I can find you.
We see you now, but you've muted yourself.
Well, I don't see anything.
Oh, you don't see anything.
Now I do.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I was asleep. You want me to, shall I read? I
Yep.
don't see the text.
Oh, you don't see the text.
Where's the text? Let me see. Where is it? You better go ahead. I can't, I'll try to find the text.
Okay, my love.
My phone's not moving. All right.
Interrupt me. Interrupt me if you see the text and want to read.
Okay.
Thanks, Ralph.
Jai Bob.
From July 10th, 1925, Mayor Baba began to observe silence and started the use of his present alphabet board, by which he points to the letters and digits for communication with others. The master's silence may not be understood, but it is done for spiritual reasons and is a form of sacrifice for humanity. Masters, as a rule, speak little. It is said that Jesus and Muhammad both spoke little. In Mayor Baba's case, his followers believe that it is a prelude to his manifestation as avatar of this age, and it continues to this day. When he eventually breaks his silence, the new spiritual dispensation is expected to come into being. Many ask why Mayor Baba keeps silence. We understand that this is done for the special purpose of concentrating the libido. For silence would increase the power or energy, which would otherwise be expended in speech. And for spiritual reasons, Mayor Baba needs a very highly concentrated direction of the forces which he uses for the work he has to do in his mission for humanity. There's no doubt that the force of Mayor Baba's silence is tremendous. He does not have to make himself felt with words. It is well known in the East that avoidance of words and explanations is a recognized technique amongst the spiritual teachers and leaders, for true knowledge cannot be revealed in words. In 1931 and 2, Purdom wrote a series of articles concerning Meher Baba, published in Everyman, of which he was editor, and various extracts are quoted here under. It is sufficient to be in his, Meher Baba's, presence to know the truth. He does not need to speak. He has the power of truth in him. It is not to be thought that he is an unpractical mystic, out of touch with everyday affairs. His knowledge includes even the concerns of ordinary men and women. He makes no demands on anyone, but those who come to him for help have to be prepared to do what he says, which may be severe. The way to truth is simple, but it is very hard. For the way to know God is to know oneself, to face oneself in one's own inner consciousness, and then, renouncing everything, to let God flood the soul. Meher Baba is master of one knowledge, which is God. But that knowledge includes everything else. The rules that he gives, so far as he gives any at all, are meditation, selfless service, and pure intention. He does not ask the Christian to cease being a Christian, but to be a true follower of Christ. That is, to do what Christ said. He does not ask the skeptical man or woman of today to accept any dogma, but in the spirit of humility to obey the God in his heart. What Meher Baba says, the mystics of the Western world have said. He also lives it. What he says, the psychologists of the West have also said in part, but he interprets their theories in practical life. It may be strange to find a great spiritual teacher from the East speaking in terms that belong to our scientific textbooks. But it is stranger still, and this is the overwhelming fact about Meher Baba, that he is one whose word is alive with spirit. The greatest visible social power among us is still example. To behold in another the realization of our ideals, or what we wish were our ideals, is what all may become. It is the power of the lived or experienced truth that we look for, not the mere utterance of the truth. Therefore, the only teacher that we can accept is one who has experienced God, or whatever we like to call the ultimate reality. He must be one who has consciously bridged the gulf between time and eternity and can show others how to do likewise. That indeed is how a teacher is recognized. He enables us to discover ourselves, to understand ourselves by his presence, simply by our awareness of him. We get through him a change of heart. He has the power to transmit grace, kindle love, and bestow illumination. Above all, he has abounding life. In him, the idea has not only become thought, as in philosophers, or inspiration, as in poets, but flesh and blood. He is a living work of art. In such a teacher, God in the heart becomes conscious. He can, therefore, awaken God in others. Meher Baba does not seek to convert man to anything. Certainly, he does not attempt to change their religion. All religions are revelations of God. What he does say is that whatever religion one has should become experience. It should transform life. Until it does that, it is a dead religion. He does not bring Eastern ideas for us to act upon, but intends to help us to act upon what we already know. He revivifies unused knowledge. He does more than that, of course, for he shows us the necessity for a change of heart and enables us to gain real knowledge through experience. Above all, he unites the mind and heart so that we no longer be so that we need no longer be divided personalities, but can live as entire men. Those who recognize him are the humble, the single-hearted, the despairing, and the aspiring. The self-satisfied or the proud will not recognize him. Here's a quote: "Who walks in singleness of heart shall be my companion. I will reveal myself to him by ways the learned understand not." Rolf, did you find the text? You got to unmute. You got to unmute yourself, Rolf.
Unmute. I'm sorry.
That's
Oh,
okay. We're
this
all
phone,
getting ancient and
this phone is more helpless than I am. I have to tell it what to do, and then it doesn't do it. Well, okay. There are imperfect. Is that where we are, Eugene?
precisely.
There are imperfect teachers who know a little. We met them often, but the perfect teacher is met with rarely. It is the time of one's life when such a meeting takes place, and it does not happen to everyone. We can meet teachers in books, but it is better to meet them in the flesh. The difficulty is that they do not often let themselves be seen. What Meher Baba is, people must discover for themselves. His authority must convince without argument. He must be recognized by the heart. We have little to add to C.B. Purdam's remarks. They stand today as when they were written. We must always remember, though the Master has been to the West a number of times, his visits have always been fleeting. And in India, for over the last 15 years, he has led a life of almost complete seclusion, or else traveling secretly. As with the majority of real masters whose work lies in unknown spheres, activity, his intimate followers are comparatively few, and all of them have been brought to him through some spiritual experience. Then again, it should always be emphasized that the master does not teach in the ordinary sense. Since he neither writes nor speaks, he is seldom seen and will often cut himself off to the extent of forbidding all interviews and correspondence. For this reason, it is difficult for strangers to see him, except at rare public gatherings. Private appointments are not usually given because they are not easy to arrange. Since arrangements in advance are not usually known, and if known, are liable to be changed at any moment, people complain. Where are we? People complain that Baba is so uncertain in his movements and continually changing his mind that it is changing his mind. It is impossible to excuse or to explain the master's idiosyncrasies. We can only repeat that it should always be borne in mind that a Sadguru or an avatar is working for infinite ends, whereas ordinary persons work for finite ends, ENDS. Therefore, the scope and manner of a master's working must necessarily be different. This is obvious if we compare Baba's eccentric behavior with that of Jesus, Krishna, and other avatars. The most Baba has explained about himself is to say, the world is against spirituality, and so against me, as I have often told you. Do not be hasty in forming opinions regarding my words or deeds. My words will prove to be true, but I alone know how, when, and where. You will not understand them because to understand may because to understand my mystical statements, supernatural intelligence is required. Everything he, Meher Baba, does, no matter how trivial, has a meaning, though perhaps not apparent to our eyes. For example, he may spend time joking and attaching no importance to argument. Oh God, Baba, urgent and no importance to urgent events of immediate interest. It is like him to spend hours discussing something of no importance and dismissing the question of creation in almost the same breath by saying it is made up of nothing. It is the outcome of nothing and is altogether nothing by itself! Exclamation. The outsider might find it difficult to understand this unassuming, silent little man was a dynamic force, a center of unimaginable power, from which stream channels of force radiating all over the world. If one is with Baba for some time, it is impossible not to become aware that he is unceasingly active, like a kind of gigantic broadcasting station, sending out and receiving silent messages about which we know nothing. With him, one has a curious sense, Baba, curious sense that history is being made and that nothing is real. To the Westerner, the Master's life is so strange and different from anything elsewhere that he has experienced that there are moments he wants to rub his eyes and ask, am I real? Jung, she must be Carl Jung, when writing in Man in Search of His Soul, says, the man of the immediate present must, by virtue of his state, be solitary, as solitude alone frees him from all embracing pristine unconsciousness that claims the bulk of mankind almost entirely. This describes Baba. One feels that his solitude must be immense, that he has been alone throughout eternity, and that he stands before a void out of which all things grow.
Yeah,
Lack
good
of
place
space,
to good place
yeah,
to
cut off. Yeah,
stop this week. Yeah, and we'll pick up here next week. Let's stop the share and stop the recording. Thanks, everybody.